Today, we're going to be checking out the Mesa JP2C. This is a really cool amp day for me. I have always wanted a Mark Series amplifier. I started out listening to metal with early Metallica stuff, Master of Puppets and Justice for All, the Black Album. Those were my introductions to metal. And those albums, the signature sound on that was that Mark 2C plus, and I believe they also modded it to be a 2C plus plus at one point. And it was just this huge metal sound that I always wanted, that kind of scooped, sort of modern, like it was moving away from what we were in the 70s and 80s and moving into what it became into the 90s and now, like that scooped but also still upper mid, kind of pick attack, really full. Just, I love that sound and I wanted it for years. I'm also a big fan of like Lamb of God and a bunch of other people that have used Mark Series amps over the years. Now, why the JP2C? Well, I'm not a huge fan of Dream Theater. I don't hate them. I think they have incredible albums. I think Metropolis Part 2 and Train of Thought, as well as plenty of their other albums, are great and absolutely prog legends. They're prog legends. But I didn't buy this because I was a huge John Petrucci fan. I bought this because this seemed like the all-around best Mark Series amplifier and would nail the tones I want and would have the flexibility and versatility that I want out of the amp. Now, there's a ton of features with this thing, so I'm going to try and condense it and just get into it as quickly as possible. Then we can hear some sound examples and check it out. So if you look here on the back, this thing has the Mesa cab clone, so you can go direct with it. It even has a speaker to feed, so you can not have to record, loud in your house. Although personally, I'm not a huge fan of the cab clone, but it's a cool option, and it's nice that it has a slave out, and you can defeat the speaker. That makes this thing really awesome, not just for studio use and home use, but if you wanted to be silent on stage and just go directly into an IR, into a board, you could do that no problem. It has a wonderful and beautifully lush tube reverb. I only ever use it on the clean channel. I haven't really found much use for it on either the distortion channels, maybe a little bit with some distortion if I was doing leads, but honestly, I just really like it on cleans. It also has a wonderful tube effects loop. You can also change this to go from 100 watts down to 60 watts, kind of makes it kind of a little bit more top-endy, and of course you run out of headroom quicker, so everything saturates more. I tend to like it at 100 watts, but it's cool that it's there. It has MIDI controllability, just every feature you could possibly want. I think it also has headphones out. Just everything you'd want is on the back of this amp. Now to the fun stuff, the front panel. Now, channel 1 is a dedicated clean, but just because it's dedicated clean doesn't mean you can't get some crunch tones out of it. If you boost the gain, it's definitely going to distort. And the mid control, once you go past noon, actually acts as a boost, and we'll show you that, but you can definitely get some more boosted crunchy tones out of it that way. Now, speaking of the EQs on these, Mark amplifiers actually kind of have a bit of an odd EQ, and some people find them a little weird to dial in. They have a passive EQ that's actually before the gain stage. So what does that mean? It means that it doesn't really do a whole lot. It's more shaping the sound of your guitar and whatever pedals you're using before it hits the amp, not shaping the preamp itself. So they kind of don't feel like they do very much. It's more about how do you want to hit the amp. The real power lies in that EQ section that we're going to get to in a minute with the different sliders. Now, Channel 2 is awesome and is what really had me excited as a Metallica fan. Channel 2 is a recreation of a Mark 2C Plus lead circuit, and it definitely sounds the part. It has that nice, just warm, liquid, kind of buttery crunch to it, and when you scoop it out with that 5-band EQ, it just sounds awesome, and you immediately get 80s and early 90s metal, especially thrash metal tones, and I get to Metallica tones immediately. I can't tell you how happy 12-year-old me was to be able to get Master of Puppets and Black Album tones just out of the box with this thing. I was so happy. Now, Channel 3 is a bit more modern. It has more gain than Channel 2 does. What I mean by more modern is it feels a bit tighter, slightly bit more mid-forward. And I have these set up with two different EQs. So I have Channel 2 set up with more of an EQ, for a more scooped kind of 80s and 90s sound. And then I have channel 2 set up with a different EQ to be a lot more modern, a lot tighter, more aggressive, but kind of drier sounding, a little less saturated. Now, both channels 2 and 3 also have pull shift knobs on the gain and the presence controls. From what it says on the website, that these are the same that were found in the original 2C Plus lead channel, just kind of set to their optimal positions. It essentially just adds a hair more gain. Feels like it kind of changed the gain structure a little bit, but really just adds a bit more saturation. And the big change you get is with the presence pull knob, where it adds a ton of extra top end. It gets way bitier. I don't particularly like using it, but if I was using a darker amp, I would definitely want to switch over to that. Now, like I was talking about with these EQs, you can assign these EQs to any of the channels. I actually don't like using the EQ with the clean. I find it to be nice and buttery and warm without them. But if I wanted to shape a clean tone or a crunch tone, I could definitely use that with one of the EQs. You can assign the EQs to either channel. What's cool is with the foot switch, you can switch between them. So I can go with more of that scooped sound or a more modern sound with just the touch of a foot switch. These are both extremely powerful and have really specific frequencies for guitars, going from 80 hertz all the way up to 6,000. Making things more present, bitey, scooping out kind of the unpleasant and honky mids, and just really sculpting a good tone. And even though they look like they're set pretty similar, as you'll hear in the in and out of mix, they definitely get very different results, even with minor tweaks. Now, the last feature to really talk about on here is pretty cool. It's the shred mode. You can assign this to channel 2 or channel 2 and 3. It's a little weird you can't assign it to channel 3 on its own, but it's fine. It's not like an overdrive, but it kind of is. It adds more top end and upper mid saturation, so you have more pick attack, bite, clarity, aggression in the guitar signal. And because it's distorting just those frequencies, everything feels tighter and a bit drier on the low end, and like kind of like you're using an overdrive, but not. It sounds great. Its only problem is it's pretty noisy. That would have to be my one complaint with the amp, really, is that mode, as good as it sounds, is definitely, unfortunately, pretty noisy. And if you're especially doing stuff where there's a lot of stops or staccato stuff, don't think it's going to work out. It's going to kind of be a little bit too noisy and bleed through the noise gate. But fortunately, this thing takes overdrives like a champ. So that's enough talking about the features. Like I said, there was a lot of features. I tried to get through basically everything with it as quickly as I could. Let's hear this thing in a mix. We're going to check out channel 2 first, getting a more old school sound. Let's check it out. I swear I played that Sad But True riff for like an hour when I first got this thing and dialed it in. It just plays so well, and 12-year-old me is so happy to be able to play some Metallica and get those tones. I can't even tell you. But because this is a John Petrucci amp, let's use channel 3 with shred mode, dial back the gain a bit, get kind of more of a modern sound. Let's play something from Dream Theater on a 7-string. So yeah, channel 3 absolutely sounds great. I got more of a modern sound on that, and I think it sounds pretty cool. Let's just run through all the features and sounds we can get out of this thing in the out of mix, and then I'll give you some final thoughts. Let's check it out. So yeah, to say I'm happy would be an understatement. I am overjoyed with this amp. I absolutely adore it. I can get so many different tones out of this thing that are all not just usable, but fantastic. I feel like I can do old school, new school, scooped, more mid forward, drier tones, more saturated tones. I love this amp. I am so happy to finally have one. I decided to buy one at this point because with COVID going on, they became very hard to get, and the used market exploded for these, and it was ridiculous. So when these were available again, I told myself, you know what? If you can't get one of these in the future or the prices go through the roof on it, you're going to regret it. So I just decided to snag one, and I am incredibly happy that I did. Anyway, thanks for watching. Stay metal.